What's going on right now in Ukraine and with Russia. Russia has, as we know, as a country, has spent a lot of time and money bolstering their cybersecurity attack organizations. It is part of what they do when they go about trying to destroy another country, which is certainly what they're doing with Ukraine. And what I will tell you is this, in my opinion, this could upend many things in the United States as well. They're not going to just stick with let's damage Ukraine. There could be more, and it could be us, especially because of our involvement with sanctions on them. Over the last couple of weeks, one of the things that came out of the federal government was a concept called Shields Up, which is a program that CISA has sent out to all critical infrastructure companies, basically having them look through their cybersecurity profile to make sure they are alert and aware in terms of what might come their way as a result of Ukraine, in the middle of this situation. So it might be a good idea for you as a board to peruse, first of all, that alert that has come out of CISA. If you're not familiar with CISA, it is under the Office of the President. It is headed by a woman by the name of Jen Easterly. They offer a number of different wonderful pieces of information around cybersecurity, and can provide you with a bunch of very good resources here. So one thing you should consider is looking at the Shields Up alert and all of the aspects of Shields Up as a program to see if that might be useful for your company. The next thing I think you should do, and I would just recommend it, is I think, and I know it sounds a little like maybe over the top for you, but I actually have done this, is call a special session of your board to review the cybersecurity posture of your company. And you may have just had a board meeting and maybe you did that. So, okay, got it. But my opinion is, given where we are right now, having the management team aware that the board is profoundly concerned about this, and sitting down on a Zoom call for a couple of hours, reviewing what they're doing to assure that you remain secure during this time, I think is worth the time. And in that meeting, you should review, first of all, as you may always do, so I don't want to presume anything, but you want to review using their framework, the detect, protect, respond, all of the aspects of NIST that is available to you, to make sure that they have put in place appropriate programs to try to counter any potential attack, especially around any patching and vulnerability assessment. So are they fully up to date on patches? If not, where are they on patching? And how are they with regard to any vulnerabilities that are out there stated in the wild? So that's probably my third one. And the last one is, I would say, consider having them look at Zero Trust as a go forward program. This takes time. This is not some small amount of small task, but basically the idea is to move beyond firewalling and into assuring that everything that anyone gets access to is role-based, that the network is completely segmented, so that even if someone gets into the network, they can't move anywhere without the right access. So those are things that you should talk about and think about with your management team as a result of what's happening now.
For the the history and legacy of, trust implicit in third parties and their use across distributed technology platforms and products has never been what it is today. And in many cases, the risks have, not only they change, but they've been harder to navigate and control because they're controlled by a matter of trust and the signature on a contract. And when we talk about cyber insurance and things like that to kind of fill that gap, so to speak, when I compare some of the first cyber liability policies to what they have today, let's face it, the insurance companies are, base it on risk and the maturity of what is being done. And, there's more outs than ins in terms of coverage. And that is the number one risk. And we'll talk about supply chain in a minute. But Bethany, as it relates to the SEC, has been very vocal in recent years about disclosures on these matters. What will this mean for boards as you kind of continue this certain circumstance and going into the future, given those facts?
Yeah, so this is other folks who sit on boards like me realize the liability that they are facing at this time. So if you know this, apologize for being redundant, but as you know, Gary Gensler is the latest SEC chair. He is very focused on cybersecurity and in particular on cybersecurity disclosures. And what those disclosures are changing, okay? So cybersecurity disclosures have been around a number of things, not just breaches, but also whether or not the board and the company has disclosed what information they know about their own vulnerabilities, whether or not the company has been breached. Is important. So they have taken enforcement actions on specific companies, not because they were breached, but because they didn't disclose a potential vulnerability, even if the vulnerability wasn't exploited. And that was in the case of First American, which people may be familiar with, and also with Pearson. They actually called that board misleading. So first is all of the disclosures around what's happening in your infrastructure as a potential for violation. Now, what also is going on at the SEC is they're starting to move into stronger and more disclosures around cybersecurity, and that means having people on the board who actually understand cybersecurity. So just FYI, there's two things happening. One, there's a bill going through Congress. It's been going through there for a couple of years, so it's not like it's who knows when it'll come out, but it's called SB 808. What I will tell you is that not only is that going through Congress, but 5 senators, around February 8th, wrote a letter to Gensler saying that, thank you for the disclosures that you've pushed for cybersecurity so far, but we demand that you also make companies disclose who they have on the board that has cybersecurity expertise and what they're using for cybersecurity frameworks. So that's also coming down the pike. And so I would just tell you that I've actually spent time doing surveys about what people's concerns are about hiring new board members. And I'll tell you that cybersecurity isn't at the top of the list. Even though it's considered important, it's not at the top of the list. But you may end up making it at the top of the list pretty soon, because if this goes into effect, you will require some sort of cybersecurity expertise on your board. You will have to disclose it. And the individual won't be held any more accountable than anyone else because it's a full board accountability, but it will matter whether or not you have one on the board. And the last thing I would say about the SEC is, this is a top priority for them, so they are enforcing. You may be somewhat, so of course you're familiar with the SolarWinds situation. That board has been sued in the court of Delaware. And I will tell you that they're being sued under Caremark. Caremark would essentially enable them to strip us of the good business judgment rule and make it into strict liability for some issues. In the case of Caremark or of Marchand, which was about a company called Bluebell and Listeria, it was because a bunch of people were killed by the product, and the board did not put in place any systems of oversight at all, and it was considered negligent. And they have taken that same language and applied it to SolarWinds. So, and cybersecurity breaches. So there's a lot of stuff going on here around liabilities for boards that we really need to be aware of, that say, even if we don't have a breach, bad things could happen. So I want you to just keep that in your mind, when you hit your next board meeting, or when you talk to your chair about what those possibilities might be. Actually, what you do when you create an incident plan is like anything else, right? It's like creating a disaster recovery plan, right? So you have the team, and the team has roles and responsibilities, and they're not necessarily people, meaning the names of people, right? Because these things change all the time. So the incident leader may not be the CISO. It may be somebody else, but probably likely it would be the CISO or someone who works for him or her, because it has to be someone who's fairly technical. So you have the incident leader, you have actual folks who are working technically on the incident. You need to also include your legal team, your HR team, your internal and external comms teams, your executives, what your escalation plans are, what the timing you think that they should be are to reach out to the FBI, to external advisors. So as I said, I have some examples of this that I'm very happy to share. Again, it's not a certain set thing, but you can create it using these templates, and then when the incident occurs, pull that thing out and use it to work with what you have on your plate as you proceed forward.
Thank you.